So my question was, what is the worst episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic? According to this Reddit post, it was Showstoppers, but let's go to the IMDb page for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. The episode list, based off of user ratings, Season 7, Episode 13, The Perfect Pair is the #1 episode out of the entire series. It's got 9.5 stars out of 10, the second one being The Last Problem, and then Candlelight Wedding Part 2. Interestingly, there's no Part 1s in any of these, except this one right here, Twilight's Kingdom, is the only Part 1 out of all of these. But the thing is interesting because that means people think Twilight's Kingdom Part 1 is better than Twilight's Kingdom Part 2, at least according to the ratings and everything like that. So it's very easy to determine what the worst episode is. All we have to do is go to the top rated and scroll until we get to the very bottom. So we do that by going to this page here, and again, this is The Perfect Pair. We just take this and we scroll to the bottom, and I'm really curious what you guys think is the #1 worst episode. Let me know in the comments below what you think it is before it's revealed. So let's keep scrolling. We're gonna get to the bottom here soon. There's there's over 200 episodes in My Little Pony. Did you guys know that? There's way over 200. There's almost 300 episodes. Anyway, here's the bottom. The #1 worst episode with 4.4 stars out of 10 is Non-Complete Clause. I don't even remember what episode that is. I'm gonna be honest with you. Let's open that in a new tab and see what this episode is. Applejack and Rainbow Dash compete with each other to see who gets to be Teacher of the Month. Oh wow, holy shit, this episode is terrible. I remember not really liking this episode very much, but let's go ahead and actually watch this episode right now and see if it actually is the worst episode of My Little Pony, or is it just the one with the least amount of ratings? Because I mean, only 435 people have rated this episode. Is it the worst one? Let's find out. And they all died horribly. So what do I think about Non-Complete Clause after watching it for the first time in years? Well, to be honest with you, it was a bit of a rough watch. Now, I don't know necessarily if I can say it's the worst episode of the entire series. There's a lot of episodes that I didn't like, and honestly, I kind of forgot this episode existed at all, but during my watch through, I kind of noticed a handful of things. I took some notes here. So the first thing that I noticed right away is Rainbow Dash and Applejack are actually my least favorite characters. I just straight up do not like them. I never liked Rainbow Dash because they're just, I don't know, something about their personality I just never liked, and I never liked how country Applejack was. I just never liked either of these two characters. They just never seemed like super great characters to me, and so right off the bat, it's already going to be a lower rated episode for me. Like right off the bat, just from that bias alone, it's a terrible episode, or not as good as other episodes. But a couple of things to note here is they're very desperate. Applejack and Rainbow Dash are so desperate for this award for basically no reason. They want it so badly, it's painful. It's painful how badly they want this, and they don't even necessarily really even fully explain why they want it so badly, other than the fact that there's a trophy. As competitive as Applejack and Rainbow Dash have been before in the past, it never seemed like Applejack was really like, I want the award, I want the award. They never felt like the award type, if that makes sense. Sure, they wanted to win, and you know, they wanted to compete. They've always liked competing, but it never felt like Applejack really wanted a trophy necessarily. And it's weird that Applejack really wants this time. Rainbow Dash, however, this is very in character for her. This entire episode is very in character for Rainbow Dash. They acted in character the entire time. They've just been like this the entire series, and so that's what I'm saying. Like when I say I don't really like Rainbow Dash very much. This episode is just in character for them. It's not necessarily in character for Applejack, although there are some traits of it that do kind of work for Applejack. But they're very desperate for this. I don't know why they decided to make them so desperate for this. Maybe they should have gotten some kind of extra reward for being Teacher of the Month. Maybe they got some kind of spa trip, or maybe they got to do something in a certain city or something like that for winning. Maybe it came with some kind of prize other than the trophy. And maybe at the end, Fluttershy could have given them the ticket or whatever, and then they end up fighting over who gets the ticket since it's just one ticket. That could have been kind of a fun ending for the episode or something. But I think they're too desperate. They should have had some kind of other incentive here for why they wanted it so badly, because it's crazy. The other thing that I had note of here, and they kind of try to turn it around at the end, but honestly, the classmates they took out on this trip just straight up didn't really seem to need this teamwork lesson at all, because for the entire episode, they're working together as a team, and Applejack and Rainbow Dash are ruining their teamwork, if that makes sense. So the classmates already knew teamwork. They had already worked together before in the past anyway, and they continue to work together pretty well in future episodes. So it just felt like this lesson wasn't needed for the characters of the episode. And at the same time, we as an audience really didn't need this lesson either, because this is near the end of the series. This is the second before last season. It's towards the end of the second before last season. It's just completely unnecessary for us to see this. We've seen this time and time again where teamwork is the best work, if that makes sense. So we didn't need this episode at all to learn anything. We already knew all of this stuff. And the classmates, the characters they're trying to teach this lesson in the episode also don't need it, because they also know this already. So it's just a completely useless episode. It just doesn't need to exist. Now, moving on to the actual trips and the things that we're trying to get them to do. Applejack just straight up wanted free labor. Let's be real here. Applejack just wanted free labor. She wanted a new apple shed, or a second apple shed or something like that. And so she was like, oh, well, you'll build an apple shed for me or something like that. Now, while that is kind of a good lesson or a good activity to learn teamwork with, it does just feel like Applejack wants free labor. And this is another thing about her character that I never really liked. A lot of the times when she needs help, or like she tries to like teach people something or help people in a way, she's usually trying to get free labor out of it, if that makes sense. She usually gets free labor out of her friends, and it just feels like like she does it too much. And honestly, that happens here again. I just wanted to take note of that real quick. At the end of the episode, I remembered this halfway through the episode. I was like, oh, I remember what happens at the end now. But Applejack and Rainbow Dash face absolutely no repercussions for their actions. They face no consequences for their actions at all in the entire episode. Sure, they fall into danger towards the end and everything like that, but it's really not that big of a deal. Like, it was pretty easy to get them out of that situation. It wasn't that threatening. And that's another thing too. The stakes are really low in this episode, which is fine, I guess, because it's just My Little Pony, and the stakes doesn't necessarily have to be high here. But even in the dangerous sections, the action sequences and stuff like that, there's basically no real danger here. It's super easy to get out of, and so they don't really face any repercussions or consequences for the actions. And as a matter of fact, at the very end of the episode, Rainbow Dash and Applejack continue to argue and fight each other. They literally don't learn anything in this episode, despite having a full lesson in the episode. Like, they go through so much, and then by the end of the episode, they don't actually learn anything. And I feel like part of that is because they don't actually face any repercussions for their actions. So this is another thing that makes this episode absolutely terrible. Another thing too that I noticed pretty early on is that this is kind of uncomfortable. One of the characters actually even says this straight up, that this is just uncomfortable to watch. And as an audience, I feel like it was uncomfortable for us to watch as well. And further on in the episode, when when Applejack and Rainbow Dash start to work together, but not at the same time, where they just start to agree with each other too much, that is when it becomes unbearable. That is the part where it just becomes extremely difficult to watch. It is so uncomfortable. It is so annoying to see them like forcibly agree with each other. It's so annoying. It's terrible. It just makes it very difficult to watch. This is one of the things that really kills the episode for me. They just don't work together, and it makes me feel insane for the fact that there's people that ship these characters together, or that these characters actually canonically end up with each other at the end of the series. It just blows my mind, because they just absolutely, I don't know, something about them, they just do not work together at all. And so it's insane to me, and it's just hard to watch, especially when they're forcibly agreeing with each other. It's insane. Now, again, like I said, the lessons and the trips that they actually take, like the canoeing trip and the building the apple shed, actually would have been good lessons or good trips for them to go on to teach, friendship and teamwork, because of course it needs teamwork to build the shed, and it needs teamwork to paddle the boat to get through the river and everything like that. But again, just like with Applejack, Rainbow Dash seems to have a ulterior motive for this specific trip. She wants to win this record and everything like that. She wants to beat this record, and this again is very selfish of them. These two characters act selfish the entire time. I feel like Rainbow Dash acts maybe even a little bit more selfish than Applejack does in this episode, because again, she's trying to win the award, but then she's also trying to win this speed record at the same time in the same episode, all within like the same time basically. And it just sucks. It just doesn't work. These trips would have been good to teach actual lessons and stuff like that, but it just didn't work because Rainbow Dash and Applejack suck too much, and I think Rainbow Dash is just a little bit too selfish here for this to work. Now, another thing I noted here, and this is the last thing I have to note here before I come into my final conclusions, Twilight kind of feels like a mom in this episode. If that, I don't know if anyone else kind of got that vibe from this episode, but Twilight just kind of feels like a mom. At the very beginning, it almost seems like she's like, oh, this is my favorite child or whatever, and that almost seems like what they're trying to hint at, like, oh, Fluttershy is the favorite child, so she gets this award for doing her chores and doing a good job around the house or helping out or something like that. So here you go, here's an award and everything like that. And Apple Dash and Rainbow Jack kind of bicker like children throughout most of the episode. And then there is a point after the canoeing trip where Twilight, checks in on them and everything like that. And this is where she really starts to feel like a mom, because it almost feels like the classmates now are her children, and Applejack and Rainbow Dash are her friends that she had watch her kids while she was out and about for a minute or something like that. And then it just, I don't know, there's just a vibe there that I get from that. And then she starts complaining to Rainbow Dash and Applejack for doing a terrible job at all of this and stuff like that. And then she feels like a mom there. Like, she feels like she's scolding her children, not like complaining to her friends or anything like that. It just feels like she's scolding her children, not her friends. And it's really weird. This was actually, funny enough, actually the best part of the episode, because it kind of, I don't know, there's something to that, I feel like. I feel like it was almost like part of the episode was to try to, it almost feels like Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Fluttershy are stand-ins for children in real life or something like that. Maybe they wanted the audience to connect to one of those three characters and think of them as siblings or something like that, where Twilight is the mother, and the mother is offering, rewards and maybe favoritism towards one of the children, and so the other two children argue and bicker about it, and maybe there's something there. I don't know what it is, but something about that is what's clicking in my brain right now. I don't even know really how to articulate it, but that's how it feels. It feels like this is an example of a mother favoring one of her children, and the other two children getting jealous and arguing and fighting each other instead of the favorite child or whatever else like that. It just feels like they're trying to earn their mother's favor, and it's really weird. And it kind of makes the episode a little bit better. But honestly, this really is not a great episode in my opinion. I can see why it's the worst rated one on IMDb, but honestly, I think there could be worse episodes than this one. I just completely forgot this episode existed. So if you do know of an episode that you personally think is worse than this one, please do let me know in the comments below, and I'll check it out for a future video or something like that. But this is pretty much just my review of this episode. If you want to see me review the best episode according to IMDb, let me know in the comments below for that as well, because I'll definitely be doing that soon, possibly. Ooh, let's see. We'll see. I need to know if you guys want to see that or not. But for now, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you did enjoy, and that's all I got. So please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all those wonderful things like that, because when you do wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.